Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Today is Sunday, August. Sorry, August 24th, 2025. This month marks 5 years since we started this Sunday class. So thanks to you all for supporting it and for coming, and to Nick Solidio, our producer, without whom this would never be possible. Let's start, as we do every week, by setting our intentions, making aspiration, generating altruistic motivation by saying the four immeasurables prayer. May all
All
beings
beings have
have happiness
happiness
and
and
the
the causes
causes
of
of
happiness.
happiness. May
May
all
all
beings
beings
be
be free
free from
from
suffering,
suffering and the
the
causes
causes of
of
suffering.
suffering. May
May
all
all beings
beings
not
not
be
be
separated
separated
from
from
the happiness
happiness
that
which
has
has
never
never
known
known sorrow.
suffering.
May
May
they
they
rest
rest
in
in equanimity,
equanimity,
free
free
from
from
attachment,
attachment,
anger,
anger,
and
and
aversion.
aversion.
So those of you who are new, Buddhist practice, traditionally always has three parts. And the first part is always generating altruistic motivation, making aspirations for the benefit of all sentient beings. The middle is the actual practice, whatever it is you're doing, be it meditation, tonglen, some kind of it could be some kind of Vajrayana or visualization practice, if that's what you're doing. And then the third part is dedication of merit. So whatever positive, uh, positive energy, if you will, a positive karmic imprints, or that is generated, created during the session, you dedicate that to because the practicing, especially with that kind of altruistic motivation, generates merit. Virtuous activities generate a degree of merit, but we dedicate that merit for the benefit of all beings, not just for our own self. Um, it's a very important aspect of the practice. So that's the third part, which we do at the end of the class. We dedicate the merit generated, created from this session for the benefit of all beings. And today we'll do a review of our basic meditation techniques, and then sit, for a little bit. Victoria has a few words she's going to share with us, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So there's a Q&A button on the toolbar, the Zoom toolbar, and you can ask questions related to the class today. I'm going to read something very brief. So those of you, I'm sure most of you are on Instagram, because that's how we, promote this class. But there's a really good Instagram page called Jang Chub Norbu. JANGCHUB.NORBU. That has lots of good little Buddhist quotes and teachings and things like that. I encourage you all to follow it. Okay. Oh, sorry. I have to open my Instagram. I know we haven't met in a few weeks, due to travel and other, commitments and stuff like that. But we'll try to be as consistent as we can going forward. Okay, here we go. Sorry about this. Here. So Jangchub Norbu is the other Instagram page that we love to follow is Pema Lotus. Pema Lotus. Pemalotus. But this is from Jangchub Norbu, and it's a quote from Chamtrul Rinpoche. Do not let your past dictate your future. If you are constantly mentally carrying the weight of your past, by mentally going over again and again all of the harmful things that have happened to you, causing you to continue to hold on to old grudges. Your mind's energy will feel sluggish, heavy, and inflexible. This is certainly not a good state of energy to bring to your meditation seat, as it will severely hinder your progress on your path to freedom. The more you can mentally loosen your grip on anything harmful that has happened in your past, the more you can let go of old grudges, the greater the sharpness, lightness, and flexibility of your mind's energy, and therefore the easier it will be to meditate. As a result, you will quickly progress on your path to freedom and liberation. With that in mind, let's review the basic, in this class we do basic shamatha, calm abiding meditation. And we always talk about the two big misconceptions about meditation for those of you who are new. Maybe you've never meditated before. Maybe you've tried to in the past and you found it, impossible or difficult. But two big misconceptions are: one, meditation's about not thinking, which is not true. The mind thinks. That's what it does, right? That's, thoughts arise in this space of the mind based on, our perceptions, our sense perceptions. And our work is watching the mind, loosening the mind, right? Loosening creating some space in the mind where these thoughts can arise and dissipate and fall, where we don't get kind of taken by them, swept away by them, possessed by them. A lot of people have this conception that meditation is sitting and not thinking. And that's like that old, that where someone says, don't think of the color orange. All right, just sit for a minute and don't think of orange. And then all you're going to do is see orange in your mind, That's the first misconception. So meditation's really about working with the thoughts. Actually, if there's no thoughts, we wouldn't be able to meditate. You know what I mean? We'd have no kind of way in. The thoughts is our way into discovering this nature of mind, this, vastness of our nature of mind, where these thoughts arise in. The other big misconception is that I can't meditate. I have a particularly busy mind. Not true. Everybody's mind is busy. Everyone has to kind of learn to do this. It's not something that's just, that's just automatic and natural, and that some people can do it and some people can't. It's, everyone's mind is busy. That's the, the way our thoughts arise and continue, and one leading to the next and to the next, this stream of thoughts that just go on endlessly, this, chatter that goes on inside our mind, is the way, things have been going on for our whole lives, basically, this internal dialogue, and it really takes this intervention through a technique, through teachings, to start to interrupt that a bit, to start like just watching it and seeing how it works, so you can start to have some space and eventually more and more freedom, within the mind, freedom to, not always be possessed by emotion and by our, knee-jerk reactions to, situations and people and things like that. So the good news is anybody can do this, and it's not about not thinking. It's about working with thoughts which you already have. And so that's the good news. Let's start by finding our posture, our pose. So traditionally, you sit on the floor, cross-legged, with a cushion. Some people don't need a cushion. Most of us find it's easier to do this if our hips are either in line or above our knees. So that's what the cushion does. That takes some of the strain off the back. Some people are very flexible and they could sit completely on the floor with no cushion, and that's up to you. But most of us are going to find it more comfortable and easier to be upright the way we're supposed to be if our hips are either aligned or above our knees. You could sit cross-legged, you can sit however loose or tight, or half lotus if you want, if you're flexible. If you can't sit cross-legged or on the floor, you definitely can use a chair. The important thing is, if you do use a chair, same thing kind of applies. The hips should be aligned or maybe slightly above the knees, feet flat on the floor. The important thing is the back straight. And the back straight, we don't want this rigid thing that's going to exhaust our muscles and make us tired. It's a loose, uprightness, a relaxed erectness. So they use the analogy of a guitar string, right? When a guitar string is too slack, it doesn't make a tone. And when it's too tight, it doesn't make a tone. It has just enough tension, then it makes the proper tone. Same thing with the meditation posture. You want the back straight, so the subtle channels of energy the energy can move freely, and the body is very supported naturally this way, and the breath is supported naturally this way. So you want it straight, but not rigid, not like a soldier. Same thing with the shoulders. The shoulders are upright, but they're not like back in this military attention posture. Your hands, you can relax them on your knees. Some people do this ring finger to the thumb. You can have it open, you can have it closed. You can do this, what I like to do sometimes, left hand open and the right hand on top, resting in the lap with the thumbs touching. Important thing is to be relaxed there. So the head is slightly tilted forward, kind of matching the angle of the bridge of your nose, the tilt of your neck or head, right? And the mouth is closed, but the teeth are slightly apart, tongue resting where the upper teeth meet the roof of your mouth. Breathing through your nose, unless if you're congested or have some kind of issue, you need to breathe through your mouth, you can. Take a few breaths, just like, with the mouth closed. The gaze, eyes, in this class and through what we've been taught, we meditate with our eyes open. One of the reasons being, we're training, this meditation, this practice is really training for life. It's not training to be good meditators. It's training to be, human beings out in the world, most of which we live with our eyes open, So, and, the practice of meditation really, it's this approach to working with our mind and working with our thoughts and having this dialogue with the external world. That's more sane, that's more calm, more less afflicted by our own bias and emotions and things like that. And that interchange and dialogue with the external world really happens with open eyes. So this is very good training. But what do we do with the eyes? Well, the angle of the gaze should kind of also match like the bridge of the nose, and then your eyes, your gaze rests on whatever's in front of it lightly. It shouldn't be something that kind of creates a story, like looking out a window and seeing a street scene and watching people come and go, and where you're going to have, thoughts and ideas and opinions about that. It could be the wall, it could be a flower, it could be a picture of the Buddha, it could be a statue. But the important thing is just to rest the gaze lightly on whatever's in front of it. So you're not staring intensely, you're not kind of out of focus, spacing out. You're just resting there. And now that you're in this posture, you're breathing through your nose, your gaze is lightly resting on what's in front of it. Just let go of whatever tension is in the body. And let's start to breathe. And we don't have to do deep breaths. We're not doing shallow breaths, just natural breath. And what will happen as we settle into this natural breathing is that we're going to start to think. Thoughts are going to arise in this mind. And we work with really two beginning techniques here. One is we call back to the breath. So we're sitting in our posture, we're breathing. I notice a thought arises. All right? My thought is, am I communicating these techniques to you properly? The whole key to this practice, the linchpin, if you will, the touchstone of this whole thing is becoming aware of the fact that you're thinking. Aware that a thought has arisen. So it's really the mind looking at the mind, right? It's this mind looking at the fact, oh, I'm thinking about if I'm communicating these ideas to you properly. Once I make that recognition of the thought, I recognize that I'm thinking, I say to myself, back to the breath. And then I focus my mind, my attention, my awareness on the place where the air is moving in and out. I focus all my attention on this and try to feel that air moving in and out as I breathe. And I relax again into the posture, focusing on the breath. And another thought has arisen about what time I have to leave the house to get to this thing that I'm doing later on. Now I've recognized this other thought about I have to leave the house at 4 o'clock. I recognize it, I say back to the breath. Again, focus the attention, the awareness on this place where the air is moving in and out. Simple. That's the first technique. And basically you're going to repeat that throughout the session. There's going to be times when you're going to be lost in thought and your mind's going to go from one thought to the next, this interlocking chain of thought. It might be a while till you become aware, because the awareness is the key, and the awareness, cultivating this awareness is tricky. That's okay if there's time. Don't regret it. Don't say that's wrong, that's bad. Just back to the breath once you're aware. Once you're aware, back to the breath. The second technique is a little bit of a kind of a inner visualization, or metaphoric kind of thing. In some ways, not completely. You think of the mind and try to see the mind as this vast, open, limitless, crystal clear blue sky, unstained, not, just infinite, wide open, crystal clear blue sky. And you're resting in that spaciousness, which is really the true nature of your mind. And the thought that arises that you become aware of, like we do in the first technique, you become aware that this thought of my next appointment has arisen. You imagine that to be a cloud that has arisen in this vast, limitless, clear blue sky. And like a cloud that arises in the actual, in the sky as we know it, it has arisen from that sky. It doesn't come from anywhere else. It comes from within that sky, and then it dissolves back into it without leaving a trace, without leaving a blemish, without affecting its structure in any way, without doing any damage, without, doing anything necessarily positive either. We should, start to kind of work with our thoughts in the same way. So our mind is vast, wide open, infinite, stainless. The thought arises like a cloud. And if I rest, become aware, and then just let it be, watch that cloud dissolve, watch that thought dissolve, and I'm back to the clarity, back to the breath, and settle back in. Those are the two techniques that we work with in this class. So now I'm going to set the timer, and we're going to actually sit. And I may do some talking while we're doing it. If I do, I probably will. If I do, just hear what I'm saying, but stay with the practice while you're hearing it. Just stay with the practice. We'll be at the back to the breath or the cloud, the visualization of the sky, that infinite clear blue sky, and the clouds that arise within it. And the clouds that arise, the thoughts that arise, can also be kind of charged with emotion. So it's almost like a storm cloud as opposed to just a gentle cloud. Some thoughts are very benign, like, oh, I got to pay my electric bill. Well, that could not be so benign. That could be sometimes difficult. But something simple like, I got to buy a toothbrush today. Or it could be something that's full of emotion. A thought that arises, oh, yesterday this person, cut me off on the highway, and I'm still so angry that this person did this thing, and the emotion comes up. That's like a storm cloud. We can work the same way. Rest within it, leave it where it is, recognize that it's there. We're not repressing it. We're recognizing that it's there, and then just like letting it dissipate on its own, rather than fuel the fire by continuing the thoughts and create scenarios on what we should have done or what we would have done. We're just like acknowledging that it's there and leaving it in its own place and letting it dissolve. That's how we're going to practice. So let's begin. Here in your posture, you're breathing through the nose. Gaze resting lightly on whatever's in front of it. I'm aware that a thought has arisen. I'm going to go back to the breath, that place between, the nostrils and upper lip, and focus there. Back to the breath. If you feel the need to shift, if you're feeling a lot of tension, you just need to shift. Just do it. You're not locked into this. Shift and then settle back into the posture. If you need to take a deep breath, go ahead and do it. And then go back to the natural, easy breath. Aware thought has arisen. I see it like a cloud arising in the sky, like nature. The infinite clarity of my nature of mind, and I watch it dissolve. And then I settle both body and mind into that calm and spacious clarity, which is the true nature of our mind. Back to the breath. Remember, the key is becoming aware that a thought has arisen and then apply the technique. Back to the breath. Back to the breath. And when you focus your attention and your awareness on the space and the air moving, do it gently, lightly. The shift that awareness brings from the thought, from the story of the thought, to just bringing your awareness back to this breath in the place where the air, gentle. Thought has arisen in my mind. I just noticed, and like a cloud in the sky-like nature of my mind, I watch it dissolve gently and relax. I'm not judging the thought, not pushing it away, not qualifying it bad or good. I shouldn't be thinking about it. I should be thinking. Doesn't matter what it is. Notice it, leave it where it is, watch it dissolve, back to the breath. Settle into that sky-like nature of mind. That is what your mind is. That vastness, that clarity, that calm. That's what's underneath all the thoughts. Always accessible. Settle into it. Back to the breath. Okay, great. Victoria is going to share some words with you, and then if you have questions about the technique, the practice, or anything, Victoria says, or I say, again, the Q&A button on the toolbar, we'll get to that towards the end of class.
Last time we met, we spoke about interdependence and suffering, how suffering arises when certain causes and conditions come together. The most important part of those causes and conditions are not just physical things. It really has to do with states of mind, because suffering is a state of mind. It is a way that our mind perceives things, categorizes it, and labels things. And so we know that things, physical things in the universe, arise only in dependence, and because of the laws of interdependence and causes and conditions. My body arises as a result of my parents. My body, when it has arisen, depends on many different kinds of conditions, such as the fuel of food, water, air. Any one of those little elements being taken out, there's no longer, existence is no longer possible. And that's for every single thing in this physical universe. Mind, too, depends and arises in a very kind of a similar way. It doesn't depend on physical things, but certainly arises in dependence to previous mental states, to previous mental formations. And when the Buddha looked at the mind, he saw this dependent arising, such as thoughts arising in conjunction with triggers and previous kinds of mental states. Buddha gave us very, very clear kind of a picture of what arises. And again, just as in the physical universe, things are not one single identity, but rather they're heaps. They're changing, renewing cellular factories that are continuously moving and changing in conjunction and dependence arising together with all the other things simultaneously. So this interdependent, the law of interdependence, another word for that interdependence is also how it arises is karma, cause and effect. You know, if we plant a seed but there's no rain, the seed will not blossom. If we plant a seed, there's no sun, the seed won't blossom, etc., etc., etc. In terms of the mind, Buddha described the mind, what he saw, what arises. He broke into what are called the five skandhas. The five skandhas skandhas just means heaps, parts, pieces. First skandha is, the first aggregate is the form, that is our physical body with its sensations, with the five sense organs, etc. Feeling. Mental processes arise together when we perceive something, when we sense something, we have feelings toward it. We like it, we don't like it. Those are very base components that arise together if you break down thoughts. I mean, thought is this conglomerate of these components. Next is perception, how we perceive a certain thing. It's not just the sense. Perception is something that sees the form, appreciates the beauty, etc., etc. Then there is mental formations. That's when we very much concretize what we see. We take our senses, we take our feeling about it, we take perception, and we start to create labels around it. I really like this, this is good for me, this is bad for me. And then there is consciousness, the fifth component, the fifth skandha. Consciousness is where our volition, our intentions, our thoughts are really kind of placed and stored. So whenever we have experience, it's a river of these five things that arise together. and they arise, these heaps arise together based on our previous attitudes and our previous experiences. Experience is a continuous flow of change, of arising and cessation. Buddha likened it to a river. When we look deeper inside it, and we try to find if there is some kind of an owner of these thoughts, well, we don't find that owner or controller mechanism. You know, there's no supercomputer in the back of this river of experience, because we know all too well when we misspeak or when we forget. We set our intention on remembering something, and yet we cannot bring that thought up. Likewise, we cannot stop certain thoughts that are getting regurgitated and circulating in our minds all the time. We do not have control over our thoughts. There is no central thinker. There is no self. What we call a self is just a thing of these 5 heaps. It's a label, it's perception, it's belief, it's storing it as a memory, etc., etc. You know, we and thoughts arise in the interdependent way by the laws of interdependence, just like physical things arise in the same manner, dependent on other things and in conjunction, in a dance with other things. For example, I look at my briefcase, I think of work, it triggers a memory of a difficult boss. Now I'm starting to think into the future and formulate kind of scenarios of difficult conversations. Am I getting the raise? He's going to be mean to me. How am I going to behave? Do I hate him? Do I like him? You know, what do I, etc., etc. One thing churns the next, the next, the next, the next. Things do not appear in a vacuum. And all the new things that arise for us are based on the stored information or stored habitual propensities which create our attitudes. If we are habituated to anger, when we wake up the next day, we've finished an angry day, we wake up the next day, our mind is intentionally looking and isolating things that will trigger that kind of anger. Angry people see an angry world, a difficult world. They see nothing but difficult people. You know, because as I said, because of the law of interdependence, our new attitudes are very deeply rooted in our previous attitudes or previous experiences. Everything is interlinked. There are many kind of other factors that enter into our thinking. We think that there is some kind of an independent free thinker who formulates thoughts all independently by oneself, but actually we're inundated with information that constantly grooms us. We are actually groomed, or we are, even in vitro. A friend of mine, a psychiatrist, said to me, you know that a child, when the child is born, already knows how to recognize the voice of its mother. That means even before we are born, we are, you know, we are inside another person's womb and we're already responding to the stimuli of recognition. We are already being programmed. And in the world such as now, where children are being groomed by companies because they're growing up with devices in their hands, and they really are not really being kind of, you know, the influences of love and attention of the parents and educators are becoming less and less and less heard voices, but we're being much more groomed by sales pitches, by, you know, news outlets, by politicians, you know, through repetition and through creating kind of content that is constantly triggering us to mindlessly buy, to mindlessly repeat, to mindlessly own. You know, we are in a continuous prison of this cyclical, you know, repetitive, regurgitated arising and cessation, independence on these triggers and causes and conditions. It is very, very difficult to escape And so there's some kind of a loss that's happening because there's so little space now for even finding and discovering that besides this kind of a constant mechanism of thoughts arising and ceasing, being caught up in our emotions, being caught up in this kind of regurgitation and this grooming and this buying and this triggered behaviors, we have very little space to find out really about awareness. But like the Buddha did, and like what we're doing now when we sit down and we cultivate a space of meditation, what we are doing is we are distinguishing between this churning river, which is constantly moving. We are distinguishing it from the space of awareness, the basic space of awareness. The space of awareness does not have thoughts. It's not another thought. The space of awareness, or what we call Buddha nature, or emptiness. And when we say emptiness, by the way, we don't mean like empty, vacuous space. What we mean is this open knowing, the space of awareness that knows, the bare awareness. We're trying to distinguish that and to separate the churning of the river and triggers and being constantly churned and rise or be produced together in these kinds of like conditioned mental thought states. We're trying to get some space of our awareness that is always pristine and free, because space of awareness is not another thought. In fact, space of awareness is the ground on which all these other things are happening. Anything that is an experience, that is a mental process. And for us, everything is a mental process. I mean, my experience of my body is a mental process. My experience of the world is a mental process. We can talk ad infinitum about physical things, but all we actually have is our mind, right? All we have when we talk about the physical world are our attitudes, perceptions, cognitions, in other words, thoughts. And so it's very, very important, especially at a time where, like now, what Garchen Rinpoche described yesterday as a really like deep degenerate stage where people meditate very little or think very little, have very little freedom. Freedom from what? From this churning, this constant river of churning, being lost in thoughts and projections, in our emotions and our desires and our instant gratification, in continuous pursuit of pleasure and escape of pain, etc., 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 of this conditioning, of this just being regurgitated through the machinery of inundating information process. There's very, very little space and time. So we have to really be very mindful and create that space and time so that we don't completely lose the knowledge that that's not our nature. That's just like a process that is a capacity that happens on the basis of our awareness. We have to regain our awareness. And yes, when we, of course, go into the physical world, when we have to cross streets and go shopping and pick up our kids from school, we need to use that relative cognitive process. But if we do it within the space of awareness, without being triggered and regurgitated and manipulated and groomed, we have a much better chance of living a better life, a life that has some moments of freedom from, being just always kind of spun out by this public place and the echo chamber. And I know it's very difficult to resist what surrounds us, the repetitive screaming at us day and night. You're wrong for being angry. You're right for being angry. You should be angry. Indulge in your anger. Indulge in this. Indulge in that. Indulge in this. Our lives are just wasted in that meat grinder all the time. because, you know, while we're pursuing a bigger house, to replace that bigger house with a yet another bigger house and another bigger house and another bigger house and another better job, and you know, then there comes time to die. And what happened? We have nothing but just like we move from, you know, one nominal thing to another nominal, you know, and we've never really cultivated peace and awareness and spaciousness for ourselves. And I want to quote from, by the way, I just want to say, you know, awareness, the space of awareness. Just like for physical things, space is the basic condition, right? When all things dissolve, when this planet is dissolved and the sun is dissolved and this, you know, galaxy is dissolved and this and that, you know, now they say there are multiple universes, this dissolves, there will always be space, you know. Same like what Michael was describing, what we cultivate in meditation. When that thought is dissolved, and that thought is dissolved, and that thought is replaced by another thought, and another thought, and the basic space of awareness will always be there. That is, the space of awareness is like a mirror. You know, whatever we project into it, whatever face we bring into it, the surface of the mirror has this quality of being able to reflect, but not being able to be stained by it. We can bring millions of things in front of that mirror of awareness, but nothing really stains the space of awareness. Awareness precedes everything. Awareness is not moved by anything. This flux, this river, when we caught up in it, we think and we feel like there's nothing outside of it, but that is so not the case. You know, that awareness is actually our primary basic state. If we didn't have the space of awareness, thoughts would not occur, experiences would not happen, judgments, likes and dislikes, you know, all this kind of garbage would not happen. You know, the good and the bad would not happen. We could not cultivate virtuous states of mind. So please connect with the space of awareness. Connecting with the space of awareness, you can connect to basic goodness. You can leave the judgments and the habits and all this kinds of stuff that is constantly bombarding us away and on the side. And in your own space of quietness, you can connect to basic goodness. You can connect to your basic state of goodness, to your basic state of sanity. You know, and that's what we need to cultivate, especially now more than ever, because we almost are not allowed to have that space at all. Whenever I see people only with the phones, getting inundated, constantly manipulated and groomed to buy, to think this way, to regurgitate these emotions and to feel like this and like this. You know, just because we feel in our body gives us like a delusional sense that we're doing it on our own. But really, please think, why am I feeling like this? Who benefits by these emotions? You know, how did I come to feel these thoughts? You know, please think about and authenticate the authorship of all these things. And even if you can, you know, even if you have some kind of a sense of their mind, divorce and find the open space of awareness. And I just, to conclude, I just want to read these two quotes by Tulku Organ Rinpoche in the book that's the title of which is As It Is. Because we have never been separate from it for an instant, this basic space of awareness. Awareness that's not thoughts, the river of thoughts and experiences. The nature of mind is not something to meditate on, but to get used to, because we have never separated from it. Distraction makes the division between these two states. Distraction meaning conceptual churning. We need undistracted moments. That's why we do meditation. We only meditate so we can bring that undistracted mind, that awareness into all our experiences, so we can act without being manipulated, being hijacked by our emotions, being predetermined by our habitual propensities. We bring that space where we can actually like act with a certain clarity, with an intention that's not polluted by all these previous kinds of things. And the other, here's another quote, which is very important. You know, Buddha gave 88,000 teachings because there are 88 polluted mental states or polluted afflictive mental states, which are formed out of the 3 or 5 basic afflictive emotions. Any of the 84,000 disturbing emotions are simply thoughts. The basic wakefulness, which is this, what we call the basic awareness, the basic wakefulness that knows is free of thought because it precedes thought. In the moment of recognizing the moment free of thought, every thought state of 84,000 kinds of the afflictive emotions is simultaneously vanquished. If the wakefulness of non-dual knowing were conceptual, then it could not do away with thought states. In other words, if it was another thought, if our basic state of awareness, pre-dualistic, pre-conceptual awareness within which concepts arise and cease, if it was another thought, we couldn't be in this non-dual state of awareness. You cannot relinquish one thought by grasping onto another. In the moment of recognizing the authentic thought-free wakefulness, every type of discursive thought movement is destroyed. And when Organ Tulku Rinpoche says non-discursive or non-thought or thought-free awareness, he doesn't mean some kind of blank state where we force our mind to just, you know, be blank and not think anything. In the beginning, we cultivate very, very short moments of being, like we ask ourselves, who is thinking? Where is that, you know, thinker? And we have a little moment of recognition of this basic state of awareness, or we do cultivate these techniques that Michael just brought us through. And it is very, very important because now more than ever, in this very kind of time where affliction is so dominant, where there's no space at all to have a moment to think, to feel that basic open spaciousness, our Buddha nature. You know, we're so deeply lost in that river meat grinder of constant buying, selling, being told what to think, being told what to do, being, you know, repetition, you know, this constant slaughter, barrage of, you know, of information is just numbing us, is just debilitating us. And now, you know, and Garchen Rinpoche said yesterday, he did a Q&A session for students. He said, you know, at the time of degeneration, which is what we're living through right now, even a little bit of meditation, even a little bit of mindfulness, even a little bit of awareness is much more precious than at a time where awareness is very dominant, you know, where people are living in a very aware kind of mental states. You know, right now where we have nothing but anger and pollution of the 3 poisons constantly inundating us, you know, practice is much more important. It's our only chance of connecting to our true nature, of connecting to our Buddha nature. And when we connect to our Buddha nature, we're not connecting to some empty space. We're connecting to our Buddha nature, and we're also connecting to all the Buddhas that pervade that Buddha nature. Mind is mind, like space is space. We cannot carve it into little pieces. My mind, your mind, his, you know, mind is mind. My Buddha nature is the Buddha nature of all Buddhas. Connect to that space. Connect to that space through your teachers. Connect through remembering and being conscious and being awake, you know. Remember, underneath all this garbage and noise, there's always luminous Buddha nature. Connect to it. Please examine. Don't fall prey to states of anger, to states of a constant desire. because we're groomed to buy shit all day long. We're groomed to be just like living desire on steroids. We're just groomed to be triggered, to shop and be in this market of information is not just information, it's information that is triggers that causes us to think and diverts our thinking in particular ways. Someone is benefiting from us thinking in particular ways and behaving in particular ways and constantly, acting in particular ways. Please take time to wake up and not be manipulated all the time by social media and the news outlets and the this and the this. Please read, please go to teachings, please quiet your mind, please spend the time, take time to just connect to yourself, and relieve this situation that surrounds us.
Thank you. We're going to go to questions. Again, the Q&A button in the toolbar. There's a couple of people just recognizing 5 years we've been doing this and expressing their thanks and gratitude. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. I notice that memories from the distant past arise during the session. I also notice I try to understand the meaning of these thoughts. Why am I thinking about that old grocery store from that old town I used to live in? Why do such old, seemingly mundane memories come up? Why? Who knows? I mean, the mind is, like Victoria's saying, it's constantly churning from external stimuli, from memories, from feelings. It's not so important to know why these things arise. It's really just important to recognize the fact that they are arising and working with them in that way. I think that's the focus when you're in the session, is not really, why am I thinking about this? Where did this come from? It's really just seeing something has arisen and letting it go. That's really what the practice, that's really the crux of the practice and what we're doing.
And if I may add, certain thoughts may arise in you because you may feel that 5 years ago you had a life that had more freedom, more relief from this constant tension. Perhaps you're just naturally kind of going back into like a time which seemed to be a little more open and free. But again, as Michael said, whatever it is, just, you check that it came. You can also notice its kind of colorature. You can notice its feeling and its perception. You may feel the sense of ease arising with it or something else. It's important to notice also the emotional kind of overtones and then let go. And then you just let go and connect back to the space. Because the more you're gonna, analysis is what is the river, the churning. The minute you start to analyze, all kinds of things, the judgments, negativities, all that stuff will get fired up immediately. So you notice very lightly and you go right back into like the spaciousness, connecting with the openness, watching thoughts come and go, because really while we're watching thoughts come and go, we're habituating the spaciousness of mind, the thought-free spaciousness of mind.
During the meditation session, I had thoughts about the time and being interrupted by my mom, who's in the house and can enter the room at any time. I think this comes from anxiety. Do you think meditation can be an alternative for treating anxiety? That's a very good question. There's a lot of ways to approach anxiety. And a lot of people, I think this class actually originated because a lot of you knew that I was posting stuff on Instagram about Buddhism, or they saw that stuff and asked a lot of people. This originated because a lot of people who followed me on Instagram asked to learn how to meditate, because it was during the pandemic, summer of 2020, and a lot of people were experiencing anxiety about the pandemic. and the uncertainty of it and all those things and the worry, and needed some kind of another way to work with that. And of course, yeah, because you're working with the mind, and the anxiety is in the mind, right? That's where we experience it. But always keep in mind why we start the class with, focusing and generating altruistic motivation is that we approach meditation through this class from a Buddhist point of view. That's what Victoria and I as Buddhists, that's what we practice. And one of the main tenets, the view of Buddhism, one of the aspects of the view of Buddhism is interdependence, and the fact that, the ultimate nature of reality is that we're not separated from one another, right? The big picture, if you will. And we have to keep that in mind as well. It's not just a modality to treat. Meditation can be, but from a Buddhist point of view, it's not solely a modality for our own, anxieties. Although absolutely working with the mind can help. You can, by working with the mind in an effective way that is offered by, calm abiding meditation, naturally, it can reduce anxiety and find a way to work with it. And of course, talk therapy, and those kind of things are very important when anxiety is at a chronic level that is unmanageable. We always talk about that as well.
And if I may add to it, so we spoke just a little bit before about the five skandhas: form, feeling, perception, mental formation, consciousness. Anxiety, hope, and fear. The way when we experience something, we right away also attach them. It's all those five things create what we call thought. A thought is a very formed, a conglomerate of components. We feel about things in a particular way. We attach a certain kind of meaning to things. We have hope and fear. Hope is moving toward things we desire. Fear is trying to move away from things we don't want. We're constantly, moving. Our whole movement of mind is between these two kinds of things. Anxiety is, of course, a form of when fear transforms into much more solidified form and becomes like a stable thing that we throw on things all the time, we become very habituated to it. Fear transforms into anxiety. No question about it, but remember too, it's a thought. Okay, it's a thought that now has physical components because we've repeated it so often. It's like if you eat cake all the time and you're addicted to sugar, just the thought of cake will make you salivate. Well, when you have this, when you have this fear that is now very dense and becomes an anxiety, and I'm not speaking like a doctor, but just as a Buddhist, you will have also physical components. So try to loosen it. Remember, anxiety is also the way you just see something, judge a situation, judge a person, less solid, more knowing that it's just a thought and you don't need to hold it so strongly. That thought does not identify reality. It's just an inner reaction. It's just what we projected onto that situation. Let your mother putz around. Big deal, she'll open the door. Big deal, she'll say something. You don't have to be interrupted. You'll only be interrupted if you permit it. Okay? This added component of, projecting a thing onto like a set of circumstances is completely within us. So working with that, loosening the bond of that, knowing that I can loosen my hopes and fears. I don't have to be so afraid because this undesired thing will come to me. If it comes to me, I'll just embrace it. And I don't need to only want this desired way. I just want the door closed and peace and quiet. less attachment to either result, to either outcome. The point is to connecting to the mind of awareness. And then also, I would also recommend, whenever thinking of other human beings, especially our mothers, Tonglen, just wish them well. Just say, oh, I hope you're, having joy while you're doing whatever, putzing around and making noise and doing whatever you do. May you have happiness and the causes of happiness. May you be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. The minute you say that, there will be a loosening of this kind of negativity, which you have projected and now kind of stabilized as this, because the projection happens from us and now attaches to that other person, and we remain in that energy as long as we choose to. And of course, based on our habitual propensities, the choice becomes less and less, becomes more of a habit rather than a choice. So unraveling that, working with that, being not so attached to the result. So if she does come in and she opens the door, be okay with that. If she doesn't come and open the door, say mentally, thank you, for letting me have peace. And next time, just, maybe in advance, say, please, I want to meditate. I need this. It'll make me feel better. I'll come out. I'll be a better person. Promise. And I'll spend time with you, like, using intention before we're just reacting, before we're swept into this kind of habitual patterns, be skillful. That's what Buddhism is, that's what wisdom is, knowing how things are. If you know that you're going to respond to it with that kind of an attitude when your mother's moving around, preemptively maybe ask her, please, can you, I'm going to take this time for myself. I'll take this hour. I'll come out. I'll be better. We'll go for ice cream. Do something to soften the situation before, rather than just kind of experience a very learned behavior that's tormenting you and your mother, loosen the bonds of emotions.
Several people asked about frequency and duration of sessions. I'm assuming that people who are new to this, the best thing you could do is do this every day. It's much, and in the beginning, especially short sessions a day. It can be 10 minutes like we did today. It can be 20 minutes. It could be 5 minutes. It can be 2 minutes. I think the important thing is start to make this a regular part of your lives. It's better to do a short little bit every day than like once a month do an hour or something like that, like if you wanted to train to get in shape or to bodybuild or to run a marathon, you have to do it, regularly. Something that takes, that's important takes a lot of regular training. The best thing you could do is create a little space, if you have it in your house or something, where you're going to do it every day. Make it comfortable, put your cushion, maybe it's a picture of something inspiring or whatever, and that's your place to do it. You do it in the morning, maybe that's always very good because it kind of sets the tone for the day, but it doesn't have to be. The important thing to do is to really start to make it a part of your regular daily routine. That's the best thing you can do.
Yeah.
The other thing we encourage in this class, if any of these ideas, are inspiring to you, if you really have interest, the best thing you can do is to find an authentic teacher from an authentic lineage. I mean, Tori and I are fellow students talking about, what we're talking about, like what Victoria's speaking of, is really from her own experiences that she's sharing. We can teach meditation, as it's just a very simple technique, but actual Dharma, Buddha teachings, you really need to make connections with an authentic teacher from an authentic lineage. And on the website where you signed in, there's a bunch that we highly recommend, and you can find their books. There's teachings on YouTube. Sign up for their email list. See them in person, if they're coming near you, or if you want to travel to them. That's the most important thing.
Because when you connect to masters, which is another way of saying you're not just connecting to some guy with a title, when we say masters or teachers, you're connecting to you're connecting to a wisdom awareness mind, not like our ordinary mind, but a wisdom awareness mind. It's not a mind that's easily manipulated or swept into this and this. It's a mind that has been in training over lifetimes, and hopefully in a continuous lineage from the Buddha to the present. You want a very unpolluted lineage where the teaching from, one person attaining enlightenment to the next person attaining enlightenment to the next person attaining enlightenment is given to you directly by a person of that level of awareness. When we say teacher, we mean level of mind. We're like itty bitty practice this in our, whatever small ways. When you connect with real masters, you get to experience that level of mind directly. Then it's not hypothetical. We're not just discussing it. It's not another thought. It's not another idea. It's like talking about, going to the moon and being on the moon. There's a big difference. That is why the extreme preciousness of connecting with the great master in this life.
We're time for one more, and if we don't get your question and you really need to ask it, you can email us at Michael Imperioli Meditation 101 at Gmail. Okay. I have a question to share about manifestation. How do you manifest your goals and make them into reality using the principles of Buddha? Buddhism doesn't really talk about manifesting your own goals. It's actually, Buddhism really is giving us tools to kind of dismantle this concept of self. As I said before, this concept of interdependence is what we're trying to move towards, rather than just propping up this concept of self that we've created, And you're manifesting things that, are coming from a biased thing of what's good for you. When we're really, like I said, in the beginning, when we're trying to kind of create an altruistic motivation, maybe just trust that. Maybe just trust that may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. That includes us as all beings. You know what I mean? There's no manifestation probably more important than that. And we're going to dedicate the merit from today's class for the benefit of all beings. Again, it's the same thing, Thinking about the benefit of all beings. We're not talking about worldly benefit, you know what I mean? Like, winning this or making that kind of money or this kind of that. We're talking about, liberation from afflictive emotions and things like that.
Still needless to say that when you can cultivate virtuous states of mind from which virtuous activities arise, you will undoubtedly have a much better life, because based on the law of interdependence, when with afflicted states of mind we take something from someone, we gain something in an ill way, we hurt someone because we, or we are simply jealous of them, we cultivate those kinds of unvirtuous mental states. From that arises all the difficulty and suffering we can possibly ever imagine. There's no other mechanism for happiness and suffering. I mean, virtuous states will definitely give us virtuous states. When we love others, we will receive a lot of positivity from them. Garchen Rinpoche said this recently on Instagram. He said, I have two kinds of benefactors. The benefactors who love me, that's easy to see. My friends, my parents, my friends, those who love me. And the benefactors who hurt me. because with them, with the benefactors who hurt me, my enemies or difficult people, obstructors, etc., I learn patience. I learn how to love even through a very difficult situation. I learn equanimity, I learn love, I learn patience, and those are the preconditions for really moving through the most thickest, muddiest water. And he said, actually, it is the difficult benefactors, meaning the enemies, or difficult people in one's life, who are more precious because they really teach me the stuff without which I could not even practice virtuous states of mind. It's very easy to practice virtuous states of mind with people who love us and give us everything already. Very difficult to practice virtuous states of mind with difficult people, with your difficult boss, with your difficult sibling, with your difficult coworker, etc., etc. And so, cultivating positive states of mind is the way. It's probably the only way we will ever have a good life. Because please believe me that when people are coming from a negative state of mind, gaining their fortunes and whatnot, they're not sleeping that great, and inside them there is, of course, all that negativity is churning and turning. There's no way to have happiness on the basis of anything like that, and of course, as Michael said, please think very carefully what the great fortune is. What is a great fortune? Is it the house you're going to leave behind when you die? Is it a job, where again, it's going to expire, or is it a certain state of mind which can be okay in difficult times and in good times equally? And please think about that very, very carefully.
Okay, we're going to close. Thanks for
Thank
Nick
you.
Solidago, our producer, for his kindness and generosity.
Thank
and
you,
then we'll
Nick.
dedicate the merit from today's session by saying it's dedication prayer. By this merit may all beings attain enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. See you next time.